Dominic and I had been married for 10 years, and we'd always lived our own separate lives. He was head over heels for his secretary, while I had my own rotation of boy toys, some tame, some wild. I thought life would go on like this forever. Then I met a guy who actually wanted something real, not just a fling. He didn't care about my money, all he wanted was to marry me. My heart wavered, so I went home and asked Dominic for a divorce. That night, Dominic smashed everything in the house, grabbed me by the throat, his voice cold and brutal. "Who gave you permission to get serious? Please subscribe for more exciting videos like this." I was dozing on the couch when the doorbell rang. I shuffled to the door in my slippers, and Dominic stumbled in, stinking drunk. His secretary, struggling under his weight, shot me a look from under her lashes, then smoothed her bangs in a way that was meant to be seductive. "Nora, Dominic's wasted," Sierra said, emphasizing the I deliberately, speaking as naturally as if she owned the place. "Could you make him some sobering tea? Skip the cinnamon, he hates it." She then smiled shyly. "He always has it the morning after a bender." I almost laughed. The whole territorial display from a fresh graduate was so clumsy, I couldn't even be bothered to engage. I took Dominic from her, my voice calm. "Sure, thanks. Want me to call you an Uber?" "Really, Dominic? Leaving a pretty girl like you to walk home alone at night," I added, glancing at Sierra. Sierra's face darkened, and she fell silent. I didn't bother with more small talk, closing the door behind her. I kicked Dominic lightly where he slouched on the couch. Cut the act. Dominic didn't open his eyes, but his voice held no trace of drunkenness. "Thanks. She's been way too clingy lately, always dropping hints about marriage. Thought I'd let her sweat a little." I said nothing. Sierra was different though. All these years, Dominic and I had our own arrangements. Women came and went in his life, the longest any stuck around was 3 months. He was a natural player, never willing to stick around anyone too long. I'd thought I'd be the exception, but just 3 years into our marriage, he couldn't resist straying again. Sierra was different, she'd already been with him for 2 years. You could tell Dominic really cared about her. With anyone else, he'd have moved on long ago. This time, he just wanted to cool things off, he couldn't bring himself to end it. Once upon a time, I would have cried and made a scene, my heart shattered into pieces. Now I just said flatly, "Dominic, let's get divorced." Dominic lifted an eyebrow, scoffing. "Nora, are you having another episode? We agreed to keep things casual, what's with the sudden fit?" He rolled onto his side, his long legs bent on the carpet, and reached out to hold my hand half-heartedly. "Fine, it's my fault for letting her drop me off. She's just a young kid, naive. Don't take it out on her." I pulled my hand away, fetched a divorce petition from the coffee table drawer, and set it in front of him. "I'm serious. I'm seeing someone else." Dominic finally opened his eyes at last. But the look in them was still lazy and dismissive, utterly convinced I was just making another scene. He grabbed the divorce papers and flipped through them casually, only for his expression to slowly harden. I leaned over to peek, half worried he wouldn't read it properly. "There are 17 properties in total, including the ones in Australia and the States. I've had them professionally appraised. I'll take 8, you get 9. As for the company, I hold a 22% equity stake. You have the first right to buy it out at market price. Everything else is just personal belongings. We'll each keep our own stuff. What do you think? If that doesn't work, I'll have my lawyer draft an addendum." Dominic sat up straight slowly. His lazy air faded away in a second, and an overwhelming sense of authority settled over him again. "Nora." He lifted his head to look at me, a cold glint flashing in his narrow eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses. His eyes were a naturally light color. Under the lamplight, that gaze of his held a chilling, almost inorganic indifference. "Are you really serious about this?" I was absolutely serious. I'd brought up divorce once before, years ago. Back then, I'd cried, thrown tantrums, resorted to every desperate ploy just to win him back. But this time, I truly wanted to end the marriage. "What are you after now, Nora?" Dominic tossed the papers onto the coffee table in irritation. "Sierra will never threaten your status as my wife. Why can't you just put up with her?" He thought I was throwing a fit over Sierra. Admittedly, I'd lost my temper repeatedly when I first found out about her. At my worst, I'd wrecked every piece of furniture in the house. I'd sat amid the broken mess, hair wild and unkempt like a lunatic, slashing my wrist with shattered porcelain to force him to break things off with Sierra. It never worked. He stayed with her all along. I shook my head. I'd been such a lovesick fool back then, embarrassingly humble. Even I wanted to go back and shake some sense into that pathetic version of myself. It's not about her. I looked straight into Dominic's eyes, a faint awkward smile tugging at my lips. It's a guy I'm seeing. He's dead set on marrying me, just won't let it go. I've run out of ways to turn him down. It was rare to see Dominic wear such a blank, empty expression. A moment later, his face darkened completely. Nora, I've already said Sierra won't be a problem for you. There's no need for you to be this stubborn. He still refused to believe me. I could barely hold back a bitter smile. All right, you can take a bigger share of the assets. I'll give you the Australian villa as well. My side is pushing hard, just take it as compensation. Dominic fixed his gaze on me for a long time, as if trying to confirm I was dead serious this time. He narrowed his eyes, his look turning suddenly enigmatic. Is it that young guy who dropped you home the other day? I nodded. Matteo had walked me right to the doorway once, and Dominic had seen them. He'd even greeted Dominic with a smile, and made small talk with him. Dominic hadn't looked pleased at the time, but he hadn't said anything. After all, the live and let live arrangement was his idea. He'd been practicing it faithfully all these years, which didn't give him much room to be a hypocrite now. The thought of Matteo tugged a soft smile onto my face. Earlier at the rooftop garden, he'd pulled out a ring. The diamond was easily a full carat. Even so, it looked trivial next to my luxury jewelry collection. I'd assumed it was fake and paid it little mind. But he knelt down in front of me, utterly sincere. It's not the fanciest ring, please don't mind. I bought it with all my part-time earnings. I planned to save up more, but I can't wait any longer. Nora, leave your husband. Most men proposing would ask me to marry them. Instead, he'd plainly told me to end my marriage. I felt a mix of amusement and helplessness, ready to brush it off casually, yet Matteo gripped my hand and wouldn't let go. The evening breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the garden below, strands of his dark hair clinging to his forehead. His eyes sparkled with the golden glow of string lights, holding nothing but my reflection. A man's love burns like a wildfire, reckless and all-consuming, carrying the courage to reduce everything in its path to ashes. In that moment, I was swept up by that same courage. A voice rose up in my heart, my own inner voice. I was 29 now, tangled up with him for 9 long years. How many more 9 years did I have to waste? Was I doomed to live like this for the decades ahead? The city hummed below us, cars moving like tiny glowing insects. After a long silence, I heard my own voice. Yes. Truth be told, I'd already started regretting it on the way back. Being with Dominic for so many years meant that splitting our assets would be a massive headache. It would upend both our lives completely. That was why we'd tacitly stuck to our separate ways all these years, never once mentioning divorce. Yet the memory of Matteo's eyes stirred a quiet thrill in me, along with a desperate sense of liberation. Maybe it was time to step into a brand new life. We're in the honeymoon phase, you know. I curved my lips into a faint smile, act on every passing whim. He'll sulk if I turn him down. You understand that, don't you? I looked straight at Dominic. Isn't Sierra just the same? Dominic's brows dropped low, undisguised gloom settling over his face. Nora, are you actually taking him seriously? It felt awkward to admit I'd fallen in love in front of my husband. Still, I nodded. Matteo is nothing like anyone else. Those were the exact words Dominic had once said to me. I'd pressed him relentlessly back then, demanding to know why he was so fixated on Sierra. He'd smiled with helpless resignation. Sierra is nothing like anyone else. And as anyone else had always included me. I never imagined I'd end up throwing those same words right back at him. Dominic froze mid-movement. A storm roiled deep in his eyes, his fingers tightening gradually until his knuckles bulged and turned bluish. He let out a cold, mocking laugh. You're really regressing, Nora. What could some snot-nosed kid possibly give you? He nodded his chin toward my coat casually draped over the sofa behind me. Could he buy even one of your coats with an entire year of working odd jobs? He wasn't lying. Dominic had never loved me emotionally over the years, but he'd always been ridiculously generous with material things. I could swipe his cards without a second thought. When new luxury lines dropped, I never even needed to shop in person. Store managers would bring models straight to the house to showcase pieces for me. No wonder Sierra clawed her way to edge into his life. The life of a wealthy wife was undeniably lavish and indulgent. I brushed a finger over the plain diamond ring on my hand. It was from an ordinary brand, mediocre in clarity and craft, the kind of trinket I'd never even bother putting in my jewelry box. Yet I cherished it far more than all my fancy gems. It's fine. I don't care about any of that. Dominic had clearly spotted the ring too. He'd once given me a huge, glittering diamond ring auctioned all the way from Hong Kong, worth a fortune. I'd never even dared wear it, instead buying a plain cheap matching band set for us to wear. But those few good years faded fast, and we'd long shared a bed yet lived in separate worlds. Or rather, he'd grown tired of me all on his own. He stopped wearing his ring, claiming the women he saw on the side disliked it. In one of our bitter fights, I'd torn my ring off and hurled it away in rage. It was never found after that, and my hand had stayed bare ever since. I said it again, firmly. Dominic, let's get a divorce. He was silent for a beat, then suddenly lunged forward. He slammed into the coffee table, sending a vase crashing to the floor where it shattered with a sharp crack. I jumped, startled, and in the next instant his hand was clamped around my throat. Dominic leaned down, his eyes blazing with savage fury. Nora, who said you could get serious about someone else? I jolted in shock, then shoved him away hard. What the hell is wrong with you? I snapped, rubbing my sore neck. What's with the sudden meltdown? Dominic stumbled back and steadied himself, grabbing the divorce papers off the table. I'm the one losing it? Do you have any idea how much our assets are worth to split? That villa alone is valued at over $120 million. You'd give up all that money just to leave me? Is that kid really that important to you? I paused for a moment, then nodded firmly. Yes. It wasn't some foolish infatuation. The share I'd get in the split would easily keep me wealthy for lifetimes. No matter how much money one has, you still only sleep in one bed. Why stay trapped in this loveless marriage for wealth I'd never even spend? I'd made up my mind. Even without Mateo, I didn't want to keep torturing each other with Dominic any longer. Dominic squeezed the divorce papers so tight the thick pages crumpled in his fist. He'd always been a man who hid his feelings perfectly. No matter how loud and reckless I'd been in our fights before, he'd only watched coldly, never letting a single emotion show. Now he was clearly seething, his face clouded with rage, red veins creeping into his eyes. Just as I braced myself for him to lash out physically, Dominic drew in a sharp breath. He adjusted his glasses, ground his back teeth, and slipped back into his usual rational demeanor. Yet his gaze was dark and unreadable. Nora, he ripped the papers into tiny shreds in one swift motion and tossed the pieces aside. You'll never get a divorce. Don't even dream about it. Dominic stormed out and slammed the door behind him, no doubt heading straight for Sierra. I lay back alone on the sofa, draping an arm over my eyes. A text pinged in from Mateo. Did you bring up the divorce? Is he giving you a hard time? I didn't reply. I had no clue what to say. A heavy weariness washed over me all at once. How had we ever ended up like this? In the beginning, Dominic and I were young and deeply in love. Back then, he was broke. After work, we'd be starving, and we'd finally scraped together enough change to share a single stuffed wrap. He swallowed hard and pressed it into my hand. You eat it. I refused, and we passed it back and forth playfully. In the end, we bit into it from either end, meeting slowly in the middle. He pushed every last bit of leftover filling straight into my mouth. On our wedding day, he'd been just as stirred up as Matteo was now. He had even less money back then, and his wedding ring held a diamond so tiny you could barely make it out. He held me tight, his young body burning with warmth that made me break out in a light sweat. He whispered, "Nora, I'll take good care of you for the rest of my life." Of course I'd believed him. We loved each other so fiercely back then, growing old side by side felt like the most natural thing in the world. It was only later I learned that the human heart is the most fickle thing. In that moment, all those years ago, Dominic had truly meant to love me forever. And later, he truly meant to give that love to someone else. 3 years into our marriage, he came home reeking of Chanel No. 5, its scent still fresh on his clothes. Tears streamed down my face instantly as I confronted him, demanding answers. He pulled me into his arms, swearing up and down that it was just from a client karaoke night, that he'd never cheat on me. I believed him. Then came the second time. The third. He grew increasingly impatient, no longer bothering to comfort me. Instead, he pushed me away roughly, snapping, "What else can a man do at work dinners? Will you stop being so unreasonable?" Later, Sierra came into his life. She had eyes and brows that faintly resembled mine, but she was much younger, a fresh graduate brimming with youthful energy, hired by him on a special exception. Dominic started staying out all night, night after night. I knew he'd grown tired of me. With such a young, vibrant body waiting for him, why would he ever come back to sleep beside me? My heart slowly burned to ashes in the endless nights of agony. So when he said to me, "Nora, I think we should try an open relationship. You can see whoever you want, I won't interfere. And you won't interfere with me either. Don't worry, I'll never let anyone else threaten your place as my wife. What do you say?" I stared at Dominic. The man in front of me bore no trace of the boy I'd once loved. That young man who'd squatted with me at the subway entrance, sharing a single stuffed wrap, maybe he'd only ever existed in my imagination. Time hadn't destroyed him. It had merely revealed his true self. The version I'd never really seen. After a long silence, I closed my eyes. Fine. Meeting Matteo later was an accident. Back then, I'd been trying to get back at Dominic, spending his money recklessly on male companions every night. That evening, I was dead drunk. The manager had sent over 5 different guys, but none caught my eye. Annoyed, I stormed out to the restroom. I crashed straight into Matteo. He'd just finished a basketball game and come to sing, still in his jersey. His sweat-damp hair was pushed back, revealing sharp, handsome features. I lost my composure instantly, grabbing him by the arm and snapping at the manager. Why keep someone this good hidden away? I want him. I was completely wasted that night, blacking out on what happened after. The only thing I remembered was clinging to Matteo, demanding to know how much it would take for him to leave with me. I didn't wake up until the next afternoon, noticing an unfamiliar contact notification on my phone. There was a red dot beside the new message. I tapped it open. "Are you awake?" I learned later that I'd gotten dead drunk and insisted on paying Matteo to take him away, pulling $5,000 in cash straight out of my bag right then. Is this enough? He'd been set on giving the money back, so I agreed to meet him, apologizing awkwardly and sheepishly. "I'm so sorry, I was totally drunk last night. I'm never usually like this." The tips of Matteo's ears flushed red. He tried to sound calm, yet his words still stumbled slightly. It's fine." I was scrambling for more ways to apologize when I spotted the university emblem on his jacket. He was a student at my alma mater. We talked more, and I found out he was a senior about to graduate. His thesis advisor happened to be an old college classmate of mine, a quiet man who barely said 2 words at a time. After that, Matteo simply sent me all his thesis questions directly. We grew close little by little. Falling for someone like Matteo was dangerously easy. He was strikingly handsome, in that clean, undeniably masculine way young men can be. Sharp, defined features, radiating untainted, unclouded vitality from head to toe. His eyes lit up when he smiled. He was the kind of earnest, uncomplicated college guy who'd ask me to meet him at the boxing gym just to show off his sparring skills. Having lingered in the shadows for so long, I naturally gravitated toward someone who lived so fully in the light. When Matteo confessed his feelings, I tossed and turned all night before finally telling him the truth about my marriage. I don't want to hold you back. We should stop here. I'm sorry. Matteo didn't reply. For 3 whole days, I didn't hear from him. I thought he'd given up, and a pang of regret settled in my chest. I'd really grown fond of him. Then late on the 3rd night, he called out of the blue and asked to meet. I must have lost my mind to get up in the middle of the night and sit in his beat-up old car, letting him lecture me seriously. Matteo wore a stern expression, fingers laced together as he spoke earnestly. You were definitely in the wrong this time. You hurt my feelings. I nodded readily. I'm guilty, I'm terrible. He frowned lightly. It's not that serious. And you already apologized to me. I've thought about it long and hard. I can accept things as they are, but you have to get divorced from him as soon as possible. He was like an earnest, single-minded young man, carefully weighing a serious matter and settling on what he thought was the perfect solution. I held back a quiet smile to myself. All right, I'll do whatever you say. Truth be told, I'd never fully made up my mind about getting divorced all these months. But now, I was sure. I wanted out of this marriage. Not just for anyone else. For myself. I didn't go looking for Dominic. We'd be seeing each other again very soon anyway. I attended the company's annual gala as one of its shareholders. Dominic stood at the center of the crowd, the object of everyone's admiration. Beside him, Sierra linked her arm through his, wearing a demure smile and carrying herself exactly like his rightful partner. A manager darted a glance at me, looked awkward, hung his head and dared not utter a word. I kept my face impassive. Dominic had always brought me along to such events in the past. We'd had an agreement, we could have our fun on the side, but we'd never cross the line in public. Bringing Sierra here tonight was clearly a petty move, his way of retaliating for me asking for a divorce. Too bad I couldn't care less. I held 22% of the company's stock, the biggest shareholder after Dominic himself. I never needed a man to prop up my standing. It wasn't long before Sierra spotted me and sauntered over with a saccharine smile. Nora, how could Dominic let you come alone? Doesn't he worry about you traveling here so late by yourself? How thoughtless of him. She'd remembered exactly what I'd said to her that night. What a petty, vengeful girl. I took a glass of champagne from a roaming waiter. I have a private driver who brought me here in the Rolls-Royce. I'm perfectly safe. There's no need for you to fret over me, Miss Sierra. Sierra's face turned red then sallow in an instant, looking utterly mortified. I turned to leave, only for her to suddenly grab my wrist. All her pretense vanished in an instant, her tone sharp and disdainful. You're just an aging woman who's fallen out of favor. Who do you think you're putting on airs for? Dominic's long since lost interest in you. He'll divorce you sooner or later. I felt a flicker of amusement. Dominic really never changed when it came to women like her. Put nicely, she was naive and innocent. Plainly put, she was empty-headed. I glanced down casually. Frankly, she didn't even have much to flaunt physically. Sierra had been hired as Dominic's secretary straight after graduation. Everyone in the company knew what was really going on between them, so they all humored her and gave her special treatment. Years of being coddled had turned her reckless and brainless. I tightened my grip on her wrist and smiled calmly. First, whether or not we divorce is our business. It's none of yours. Second, you seem to have forgotten I'm on the board. I can have you fired anytime I want. Fire me? A look of disdain crossed Sierra's face. She reached out and knocked my champagne glass over. The wine splashed all over her dress, and she stumbled back a few steps with a shrill gasp. Ah! Dominic's gaze snapped over at once. He strode straight to her side, brows furrowed. What happened? Sierra leaned into his chest, tears welling up in her eyes in an instant. Nora, I don't know what I did to upset you. I'm so sorry, please forgive me. I'm begging you. I truly don't know where I went wrong. The tears flowed easily. Stained with wine, her white dress made her look utterly pitiful. The scene drew every eye in the ballroom. Murmurs and whispers rose, faces alight with barely concealed curiosity. I'd underestimated her. I never thought Sierra would pull such a dramatic stunt. I'd only meant to scare her a moment ago, but now she'd cornered me, and irritation flared up inside me. What is going on here? Nora, Sierra's young and naive. Don't hold it against her. Dominic took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders, his tone carrying a clear note of reproach directed at me. My expression turned icy. She's certainly naive enough. Sierra, you spilled that wine on yourself, it has nothing to do with me. I'd like to ask what you take this company for? A filming set? Have you lost your mind? Everyone here was a seasoned professional. No one failed to see through her shallow performance. Did she really think she was in some bad soap opera? Smirks laced with derision flickered across the faces in the crowd. It was obvious they all thought she was making a fool of herself. Even Dominic's expression darkened with displeasure. Still, he stepped in front of her to shield her, lowering his voice. Nora, let it go this once. After years of endless disappointment, my heart still ached at that moment. Perhaps old hurts ran too deep. Even though the wound had long scabbed over, it still throbbed faintly now and then. He really did care about Sierra, I realized. Dominic once told me he hated foolish women most of all, yet here he was, defending one without hesitation. I suddenly spoke up. Dominic, fire her, and I'll never bring up divorce again. The second the words left my mouth, I cursed my own stupidity. All this time later, even without loving him anymore, I still couldn't stand the bitter defeat. I hated being outshone by her. Dominic cared deeply about the company, about splitting our assets. I wanted to know, when weighed against me and everything we owned, could I ever compare to her in his heart? A heavy silence fell over the banquet hall. Everyone waited breathlessly for Dominic's reply. Dominic and I were locked in a silent standoff, staring each other down, both waiting for the other to back down first. After a long pause, he tilted his chin up slightly, his voice calm as ever. I'm sorry, Nora. He said firmly. She stays. All eyes turned to me. I lowered my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips that no one could see. What was I still hoping for? I should have known the answer all along. Fine. Sierra shot me a triumphant grin. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye, said nothing, and turned to leave. Dominic seemed about to say something, but in the end, he stayed silent. Stepping out of the ballroom, the cool night breeze of summer brushed against my face, lifting the gloom from my heart. I was about to wander along the path when a small car by the road suddenly lit up and honked twice at me. I froze. Mateo poked his head out of the window, his face lighting up with a big smile. Why'd you come out so early? I thought it'd last much longer. I stared in surprise. What are you doing here? I looked up Dominic's company gala easily. I was worried you might drink too much and have no one to take you home. Mateo whispered. Your husband's mistress is here too, right? I had to laugh at his bluntness. Yeah. We just had a showdown. The odds weren't in my favor, so I had to make a tactical retreat. But Mateo wasn't joking. He studied my face carefully, then waved me over. Do you want to ride the Ferris wheel? No. Sitting in the bumpy little car as we wound through the city streets, I felt a little dazed. Why had I agreed to ride a Ferris wheel in the middle of the night? I'd turned down my rolls with the Starlight headliner, a comfortable ride home to my luxury mattress, to bounce around in this beat-up used car with Mateo. The amusement park was nearly empty at this hour. He carefully took my hand and led me into the glass carriage. As we rose higher, the city sprawled beneath us, a sea of glittering lights. The stars overhead were faint, but the view was breathtaking. Matteo hugged me from behind. Beautiful, isn't it? When I'm in a bad mood, I come here. I fell silent for a moment. How did you know I'm upset? He rested his chin on my neck. Your eyes are crying. I said nothing. All in all, Matteo and I had only been together for 6 months. What about Dominic? I thought for a moment, realizing I couldn't even count the years anymore. High school, college, graduation. It must have been over a decade. I used to keep track, but now I couldn't be bothered. Someone who's only known me for 6 months can tell I'm sad. Could Dominic really not see it? Of course he could. He just didn't care. I finally understood the question that had been bothering me for so long. I never got how Dominic could abandon me so easily after all these years, turning his affection to someone else overnight. It turns out it has nothing to do with time. Only with love, whether there is any or not. I turned my head, only to find Matteo staring at me. There were thousands of lights below, but his eyes reflected only me. Nora. He never called me sister, always using my nickname directly. He said, "Don't be sad. You're better than anyone else. It's his loss for not loving you, not yours." Maybe the wind blew into my eyes, because suddenly my vision blurred. I said nothing, leaning in to kiss him. Matteo froze for a second, then took control. The kiss of a young man was fiery and unrestrained, like a single spark that could ignite a prairie fire. I felt my reason evaporate and burn away with his kiss. Even the wind seemed to stand still, trapped here, growing warmer with us. When Matteo's sweat dropped onto my eyelid, I closed my eyes and hugged him tightly. Just this once, I told myself. Call me selfish. Let me follow my heart. Even if it's just for this moment, let another man completely fill the void Dominic left behind. We never made it to the top of the Ferris wheel. I fell asleep in the car, waking up wrapped in Matteo's jacket. He looked wide awake and full of energy, shirtless with his toned muscles on display. He even flexed his chest playfully. Look, it moves. I couldn't help but laugh. When I got home, Dominic was already there. He looked like he hadn't slept a wink, his fingers steepled against his forehead. You're back? He lifted his head. I've thought about what happened today. I was in the wrong. His gaze froze on my neck. I heard the warmth drain from his voice, syllable by syllable. Nora, he said, his usual composure cracking for the first time, where were you last night? I couldn't be bothered to deal with him. I was worn out completely, that man had worn me out, and all I wanted was to sleep. Dominic stood up abruptly, grabbing me tight enough that I winced in pain. What are you doing? He stared fixedly at my neck, his eyes flaring red with rage. Nora, what the hell is this mark? Where exactly were you last night? I pulled out my phone and checked the side of my neck. TCH. Just like a lovesick pup leaving his mark. You know perfectly well what it is, I sneered. It was far from the first time Dominic had come home marked with hickeys of his own. In the beginning, those marks hadn't felt like just marks on skin to me. They were like branding irons seared straight into my heart, sizzling and sharp, a pain I could hardly bear. With time, I'd slowly grown numb to it. Funny how you don't recognize them when they're on someone else. Dominic went rigid, the fire in his eyes fading little by little. Before long, I even caught a flicker of sorrow in his gaze. How strange. Could he actually feel hurt? He kept holding on to me, and after a long pause, his voice trembled faintly. Nora, I'll fire Sierra. You break things off with that young man, and we'll pretend none of this ever happened. Can we? I could have sworn I saw a trace of pleading in his eyes. Suddenly, the whole thing felt utterly pointless. If he'd said this sooner, I might have actually considered it. But someone was waiting for me now. I had no time to waste lingering in this dead-end marriage. I yawned and pried his hands off me. Move aside. A decent dog knows better than to block the way. Early the next morning, the aroma of home-cooked food filled the house. I thought I was imagining it. I never allowed strangers inside, so we had no live-in housekeeper, only a cleaner who came by on a fixed schedule. I walked barefoot into the living room. Dominic stood there in an apron, holding a spatula. His gaze fell on the mark on my neck, then darted away as if burned, his smile strained and forced. "Come have breakfast. I made your favorite chicken wings." 3 dishes and a bowl of soup steamed hot on the dining table. It was obvious he hadn't cooked in years and was out of practice. The chicken wings were slightly burnt, and the greens had been boiled far too long, limp and wilted. Dominic wiped his hands awkwardly on his apron, clearly noticing his clumsy work. "It's been ages since I cooked. It doesn't turn out nearly as well as before." I sat down at the table, lost in a daze. I'd eaten these dishes countless times long ago. Back when Dominic hadn't made his fortune yet, we lived in a tiny rented studio with a shared communal kitchen. I'd always been frail and prone to falling ill back then. A hospital check showed I had anemia. His career was only just starting, swamping him with work, yet he still rushed home every single day to cook for me. I told him I could manage on my own, but he'd never feel at ease leaving me to fend for myself. He'd always say gently, "It's fine, I'm not tired." Chicken wings, greens, cabbage and shrimp, and tremella lotus seed soup, these were all my absolute favorites. Later on, he'd mastered the craft perfectly, able to finish all the dishes in an hour and a half, every plate neatly and beautifully made. I couldn't remember how long it had been since I'd last tasted them. It all ended the very day I first caught a whiff of another woman's perfume on him. Just a few years had passed, yet sitting across from him sharing a meal felt like a lifetime away. I spoke with tangled emotion. Why even bother? What was the point of all this now? Dominic filled my rice bowl, sat down opposite me, and carried on in a quiet, resolute tone. "I've thought it all through. I crossed the line before. You know how men are, we struggle to control ourselves sometimes. I shouldn't have humiliated you over Sierra. You were right to want her gone. I'll have my assistant fire her right away. I'll keep myself in check from now on, and we..." He paused, his voice faltering for a moment. "Let's stay married. Please?" I lifted my eyes to look at him. Dominic had always been confident and unyielding. Even when he cheated, he'd hold my gaze and admit it bluntly without a shred of remorse. Now he couldn't even meet my eyes. I knew him too well. He was panicking. Suddenly the food in my mouth turned tasteless, like chewing on plain wax. If he'd begged me like this half a year ago, I would have been overjoyed. He'd worn me down for years, my whole fixation clinging to the foolish hope he'd turn back to me. Loving someone too deeply makes you lose yourself, lose all sense and reason. But now... Mateo's soft words from the night before echoed in my mind. He was right. It was Dominic's loss for not loving me, not mine. I would never let him hurt me again. I shook my head. There's no need. If we try again, we'll only end up right where we started. It won't be like that. Dominic set down his bowl and strode over to stand in front of me. I'll never go near another woman again. His fingers brushed slowly over the skin of my neck, rough calluses stinging me faintly. Darkness settled deep in his eyes, his voice dropping to a hoarse murmur. "Nora, is he better than me?" A wave of discomfort washed over me. I inched my chair back. Dominic leaned down, pressing close to my neck. His warm breath fanned across my skin, raising goosebumps. "Nora." He mumbled my name, his lips brushing against my skin. "I can give you everything he can." We hadn't been intimate for a very long time. He'd grown tired of me, craving the novelty of younger women. I'd grown repulsed by him, seeing him as tainted. We didn't even share the same bed anymore. In that instant, a violent wave of nausea churned in my stomach. I shoved him away hard and bolted for the bathroom, throwing up every bite I'd just eaten until there was nothing left. I retched uncontrollably, tears streaming down my cheeks, gasping for air long after. Dominic hurried after me, his face drained and rigid with shock. "Nora," he said, barely able to comprehend it, Do you find me that repulsive? Yes, I did. Compared to the heartfelt kiss of the night before, this touch was laced with something else entirely. For the first time, I couldn't stand the feel of his hands on me. Teary-eyed, I rinsed my mouth, then waved him away weakly. But Dominic wouldn't let me off. He snatched my wrist, yanked me to my feet, and burst into a rage. You planning to stay chaste for him or something? He advanced abruptly, pinning my arms and trying to kiss me, while roughly tugging at my nightgown. His scent felt foreign now, so alien it made my skin crawl. I finally reached my breaking point. I broke free with all my strength and slapped him hard across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the quiet room. Dominic turned his head aside, frozen in silence for a long moment. My lips trembled as I spoke shakily. Dominic, you disgust me. After a long pause, Dominic slowly turned to look at me. His gaze held every emotion and none at all tangled into one. Then he ripped off his apron in one violent motion and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The next day, I went to the office. With a company this size, divorce involved share transfers and financial audits. I needed to oversee things personally. As soon as I stepped out of the elevator, a manager hurried over. Director Nora, Mr. Dominic just gave the order to fire Sierra. She's packing up her things right now. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. He'd dug in his heels and refused to let her go no matter how we fought before. Now he'd made the call without hesitation? I brushed a finger over my neck, where the hickey was already fading. Had he finally tasted his own medicine? Did the sting of being on the receiving end make him understand at last? I sounded utterly indifferent. It was far too late for this. His compromise came when I no longer cared to accept it. Regret after the damage was done meant nothing to me now. I was heading toward finance when I ran straight into Sierra, struggling with a large cardboard box. 2 male colleagues flanked her, ostensibly helping but clearly there to escort her out. Her eyes were swollen and puffy, her waterproof mascara smudged all over her under eyes. She kept her head down, tears glistening in her lashes. Everyone around pretended to be busy with work, yet they stole glances and whispered, their faces full of mockery and scorn. She was an incompetent hire who'd ridden solely on Dominic's favor, with an attitude to match. For years, everyone had bitten their tongues out of respect for him. Now that Dominic had clearly withdrawn his protection, she was nothing. Sierra looked up and spotted me, raw hatred flashing in her eyes, as if she might lunge at me any second. She swiped at her face to compose herself, lifted her chin, and blocked my path defiantly. Are you satisfied now, Nora? I'd wanted to avoid making a scene in public and ignored her, but she refused to let me pass. Her face twisted with envy when she caught sight of my new Dior coat. You old woman. Dominic won't let you get away with this once he's back. He's never loved you, do you hear me? He told me himself, touching you feels like touching a stranger, he's completely lost interest in you. Dominic will leave you. He'll divorce you and be with me, you'll see. I barely held back the urge to roll my eyes. You're a young girl sleeping with another woman's husband for free, and you act like it's some kind of honor? My brows knitted tight. Did your mother teach you no manners at all? Security, escort her out of the building. I've had enough of her nonsense. Sierra's greatest foolishness was that she could never see the truth, she was nothing but a clinging vine living off Dominic's support. She could be arrogant and domineering only as long as he chose to shield her. The moment he cast her aside, she had nowhere left to go. Still she ranted and raved, making herself utterly ridiculous. Security came over at once and dragged Sierra away. She was hauled out like a lifeless puppet, yet still spat insults the whole time. Don't get too smug, Nora. Dominic will bring me back for sure. Just you wait and see. I strode over to her, a cold, faint smile on my lips. You're deluding yourself. I didn't get you fired this time. Dominic did. The moment I mentioned divorce, he panicked. He couldn't wait to get rid of you, and I hadn't even brought you up. That's impossible. Sierra's face paled instantly, then she ground her teeth angrily. You're lying. Dominic would never treat me like this. Believe whatever you want. I shrugged and turned away. Behind me, Sierra broke into frantic sobs and shouts. It can't be true. Nora, go to hell. You're lying to me, aren't you? He wouldn't do this to me. He said he loved me, he said so. I sneered with my back facing her. Love? He'd said those same words to me countless times. Yet look how we'd turned out. I finally saw the truth clearly now. Me, Sierra, all the other women in Dominic's life, he had never loved any of us. The only thing he'd ever loved was the never-ending rush of novelty. When I got off work, Dominic's car was already parked by the curb. I thought for a moment, then got in. I fired her, he broke the heavy silence in the car. I sighed softly, you finally let her go. I thought you were genuinely fond of her. Dominic curled his lips into a cold smirk. Fond isn't the right word. She was just a little distraction I kept around. Yet you defended her stubbornly every time I confronted you? The words were barely out before I understood. Dominic hadn't stood up for Sierra out of affection. He'd simply thought my outbursts posed no real threat. I could only lock myself at home, grieving like a neglected wife for days, but I'd never actually leave him. Now that he saw I was dead set on divorce, fear finally settled in. Dominic lit a cigarette, smoke swirling thickly inside the confined car. He leaned back in the seat, his eyes hidden behind the hazy mist, unreadable. Nora, we've weathered good times and bad together. There's no need to end things like this. I might fool around with other women, but none could ever take your place. We're different to each other, aren't we? Dominic, you're utterly shameless, I said calmly. So what? He exhaled a cloud of smoke, a mocking glint in his eyes as if ridiculing my naivety. All men are the same, Nora. I meant to stay faithful to you at first, but temptation's impossible to resist. Women throw themselves at me non-stop. I can turn one down, two down, but dozens, hundreds? He glanced sideways, a faint cold light glinting behind his gold-rimmed lenses. Do you really think that young man will be any different? Nora, I'm a man. I know how we think. In the end, every man is cut from the same mold. I leaned back against the seat and spoke quietly. No, Dominic. Don't ever compare yourself to him. You're not worthy. Dominic froze for a split second, then squeezed the cigarette so hard it snapped between his fingers. What did you say? I looked straight at him, my expression completely blank. There's a line between a human and a brute. Humans have the self-control to restrain their impulses. If you chase every fleeting desire like a rutting hound, what makes you any better than an animal? I want a decent man who can stay loyal to a marriage, not a beast. Dominic stayed silent for a long time. He only jolted back to reality when the burning cigarette but singed his fingers. What if I promise I'll never go near another woman again? He kept his head lowered, unable to meet my gaze. We've shared so many years. I'll admit it, I really can't bear to lose you. I'll change, I swear. Just give us one more chance. It felt surreal hearing such words from him. For years, he'd kept drilling the same excuses into my head. This is just how men are. Work social calls demand trivial flirtations, nothing serious. They'll never threaten your position, so why overreact? He'd been dead certain I'd never leave, so he'd never bothered to care about my feelings. His words would replay in my mind night after sleepless night, a form of self-torture that left my heart raw and bleeding. Now he was telling me he wanted to settle down for good. I believed he meant every word in that moment. He was a man too proud to lie outright. Sometimes, I even wished he would lie to me, if only to spare me the stark, pathetic reality. My phone buzzed with a message. I opened it, it was Matteo. We're having my graduation dinner tomorrow. Everyone's bringing their partners, will you come as mine? A smile crept onto my lips unconsciously. Matteo was always looking for ways to make our relationship public, especially after that night on the Ferris wheel. He could hardly contain himself, wanting to be by my side every hour of the day. He was handsome, outstanding, surrounded by countless beautiful young women wherever he went. And yet he only had eyes for me, making me fall deeper for him each day. I pushed open the car door and smiled at Dominic. "I'll pass. I've already found the one I want to stay with." A partition of tinted glass separated Dominic and me inside the Rolls-Royce. He sat wreathed in lingering cigarette smoke, his expression shadowed and inscrutable. He seemed to mumble something under his breath. But we were too far apart, and I couldn't make out a word. I moved out of the house soon after. Dominic used to stay out night after night, and I'd slowly grown used to living alone. Lately though, he'd changed completely, coming home sharp on time every single day, like clocking in for work. He'd roll up his sleeves and cook as soon as he walked in, then try to sleep beside me at night with a pillow in his arms. I'd been forced to lock my bedroom door to keep him out. Every morning, the ashtray was piled full of cigarette butts. Dominic had always been self-disciplined, moderate with smoking. I'd never seen him let himself unravel like this. He started bringing up the old days, reminiscing about when we were broke, sharing a simple wrap. He'd talk about how I used to finish work too late for the bus and was too frugal for a cab, so he'd ride a shared bike to pick me up every night. I'd cling to him, chattering about everything that had happened during my day. We had no money back then, yet we were truly happy, Dominic said, his tone soft with nostalgia. I only found it tedious. I'd rehashed those memories countless times over the years, both to myself and to him. Bringing them up now felt hollow and pointless. He truly seemed set on mending us. He handed most company matters over to his assistant and stayed home around the clock to be near me. Fed up with his clinging, I packed my bags and moved out for good. Dominic didn't try to stop me the day I left. He only looked quietly dejected. I was almost at the elevator when he finally spoke. "Nora, I won't stop you from seeing him. You can keep him as a casual fling, and I'll turn a blind eye. Just don't get a divorce. Please? I'll bear every ounce of hurt you've endured. Would that make it fair?" His words came out strained, laced with quiet humiliation. For someone as proud as Dominic, this was an unimaginable compromise. "I can't," I said, turning back to face him. "He's dead set on marrying me." Dominic finally agreed to the divorce. His only condition was to meet Matteo in person. The three of us got into the car. Matteo took the front passenger seat, while Dominic sat in the back, his expression grim, though he remained silent the whole time. I was about to start the car when a red SUV suddenly swerved out right in front of us in the parking garage. I recognized it immediately as Sierra's car, the one Dominic had bought for her. We'd had a huge fight over it back then. The garage echoed with the screech of tires. Through the windshield, I could make out Sierra's contorted, raging face as she screamed, "Go die." In that split second, Dominic lunged forward from the back seat, clearly trying to shield me. Matteo was fastened tight by his seatbelt, unable to move. My own instant reaction was to throw myself straight into Matteo's arms. Boom! Sierra slammed hard on the gas, and the two vehicles crashed together with brutal force. Metal shrieked against metal, glass shattered. In the final instant, all I felt was someone's hands cradling my head. Then, everything went black. I came to staring up at a plain white ceiling. The sharp smell of hospital disinfectant slowly drifted into my senses. "You're awake?" A nurse glanced over and replaced my drip with practiced ease. "You were in a car accident, remember? You got off lightly with just a few scrapes. Your husband and your brother both went out of their way to protect you. Let me know if you feel dizzy or nauseous, so we can rule out a concussion." I tensed up at once. "Where's Matteo?" "The young man in the tracksuit?" "Oh, your brother's more seriously injured," the nurse said as she took my temperature. "He threw his whole upper body over to shield your head. He fractured 2 fingers and suffered a head knock, though it's nothing critical." "Does he play piano for a living?" I shook my head softly, biting my lower lip. what about the other man? I remembered how Dominic had lunged toward me before the crash, trying to shield me. My heart was tangled in confusion. I could never understand why he'd done it. He was the one who'd grown indifferent to me. He was the one who'd hurt me time and again. Yet in the end, he was also the one who'd risked his life to protect me. What had driven him to do this? The nurse fell silent for a second before comforting me gently. He's badly injured. He would have been fine sitting quietly in the back seat, but he insisted on lunging over to shield you. 2 of his ribs are fractured, and one was just 8 millimeters away from piercing his heart. He's still in ICU, but he's out of danger now. Don't worry too much. I lowered my eyes. I could never truly figure Dominic out. It felt like I'd never seen the real him all these years. Dominic woke 3 days later. Luckily, he'd always been physically strong, and after a few more days of recovery, he was transferred to a regular ward. Matteo didn't come in with me. He stopped at the door and said softly, "I'll stay out here. You two must have a lot to talk about." I nodded and pushed open the ward door. It was only a few days apart, yet Dominic looked like a completely different person. He'd been surviving on glucose and nutrient fluids, grown noticeably thinner, unshaven and huddled in his hospital gown, looking frail and worn. I sat silently beside the bed, neither of us speaking. After a few minutes, I broke the silence. "Why did you save me?" The police had told me Sierra had been lying in wait for 3 days, planning the deliberate crash to kill me. If Dominic hadn't shielded me, I would have been severely hurt too. He'd been sitting safely in the back seat, with no need to get hurt at all. Dominic gave a faint weary smile. "There's no grand reason behind it. I just reacted on instinct without thinking." Silence settled over us once more. After a long while, he turned his gaze toward the window. "Perhaps you mean far more to me than I ever admitted. All these years, I convinced myself I didn't love you anymore. There were always endless young, fresh women throwing themselves at me, fawning over me and looking up to me with admiration. But you were never like them. You've seen me at my lowest, most desperate point. Every time I looked at you, I was forced to remember those penniless, awkward days. No one likes dwelling on their most pathetic moments, so I kept my distance from you too. I truly believed I'd fallen out of love." He frowned, looking lost and confused. "But strange as it is, the second that car charged at us, all I could think was that nothing could happen to you. Even I can't make sense of it myself. I didn't understand it either. The human heart is that complicated. Sometimes it's a mystery even to its owner." I twisted my fingers, unsure what to say. Dominic forced a thin smile, one that looked more painful than tears. "I once thought you'd love me forever. You were shattered when I turned to others back then, and I assumed you'd always stay waiting for me. You threw yourself in front of Matteo during the crash, didn't you? Nora, you've always been this way, foolish enough to give your whole heart to whoever you love. You'll only end up getting hurt, do you know that?" I hung my head low. I once thought Dominic no longer loved me, yet he'd chosen to risk everything to protect me in that moment. I once thought I'd love Dominic for the rest of my life, yet when disaster struck, my instinct was to run to someone else. It was all rather ridiculous. "Nora," Dominic called my name. I looked up. "Yes?" He smiled bitterly, his eyes filled with resignation. "Let's get divorced. I'm letting you go. Just go now." I hesitated. "You're still recovering from your injuries. Let's wait a while longer." A forced smile tugged at Dominic's lips. "Don't flatter yourself, Nora. Do you think I can't live without you? I'm young, wealthy, handsome, an eligible bachelor through and through. There's a long line of women waiting to chase after me. I'm not going to pine over a fickle woman like you. Sign the divorce papers quickly, so I can go find someone young and pretty." Even now, he still refused to admit defeat. I let out a bitter smile and stood up. "Fine." Just as I was about to walk out of the room, Dominic called me back. "Nora." I turned. His eyes were rimmed with red, or maybe I was just seeing things. It almost looked like he was crying. "What is it?" He stared at me for a long moment, then sneered harshly. "Nothing. Take your lover and stay far away from me. I don't want to lay eyes on you ever again." His voice trembled uncontrollably, no longer able to hold up his proud pretense. The sunset filtered through the yellowed window panes, casting half his face into shadow. He looked like a lost traveler abandoned by the one he loved, longing for me to turn back yet too stubborn to say a word. I suddenly remembered the first time I saw him. It was a sunset just like this. He'd turned to me, a bright smile in his eyes. "Hey, can I borrow a pen?" More than a decade had passed in the blink of an eye. Time and life had worn us down, leaving us a far cry from the people we once were. I had nothing left to say. I only gave one last reply. "All right." Sierra survived the crash, but her spine was fractured, condemning her to a life confined to a hospital bed. I went to visit her once. Hatred blazed stronger in her eyes, spewing endless vicious insults at me. Her words were too crude to bother with. I glanced at her once and turned to leave. Before I walked out, I deliberately flashed my Hermes handbag, the very one she'd always begged Dominic to buy for her, the one he'd always forgotten about. She glared at me so hard her eyes nearly bulged out, yet trapped in her bed, powerless to do anything but watch me leave calmly. No one knew if she'd ever recover. Even if she did, the law awaited her for her attempted murder. A year after my divorce from Dominic, Matteo and I got married. Dominic didn't attend the wedding, but he sent a generous red envelope. He even called me, his tone laced with petty sarcasm. "That wedding ring is far too plain. Even the side stones on the one I bought you were fancier than this." I realized then he must have secretly come to watch the ceremony, just never showed himself to me. We fell into a long, awkward silence, neither knowing what to say. After a long pause, he murmured quietly. "Nora, if he ever treats you badly, you can always come back." I curved my lips into a soft smile. "In your dreams." He shot back at once. "I'm just joking. Don't get too cocky. Mark my words, divorcing me will be the biggest regret of your life. You'll never find another man as good as me." I shook my head with a laugh. Right before hanging up, Dominic whispered, "Nora. I'm sorry. For everything. I wish you happiness." I closed my eyes. "You too, Dominic. I mean it sincerely." Not far away, Matteo called out loudly. "Babe, come count the wedding gifts. We'll deposit all the money into your account later." Dominic heard his voice and hung up the phone silently. I rubbed my face lightly. "I'm coming." Some people don't stop loving each other, they're just fated to have deep affection yet shallow destiny, bound to part ways no matter how strong their feelings. Staying together would only bring endless pain to one another. Rather than torturing each other till old age, it was better to let go, and set each other free. Dominic. I truly hope we both find our happiness at last.
Dominic's point of view. The first time I saw that young guy Matteo was the day he dropped Nora off at our doorstep. Nora stood there smiling brightly at him, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. She used to smile all the time. I couldn't remember exactly when she'd stopped laughing when we were together. It must have been after she found out about the first woman I'd cheated with. I couldn't recall clearly. She looked genuinely happy. A strange, uncomfortable twinge stirred in my chest for no reason. I knew Nora had her flings now and then. I'd always assumed it was just to get back at me, so I never paid it any mind. But this time felt different. When I got home, I deliberately stripped off my shirt in the living room, exposing the scratch marks Sierra had left on my back. In the past, these marks would drive Nora crazy. She'd cry and scream at me, smashing everything within reach before curling up alone in tears. I used to hate her overreactions. Once a man gains power, desire follows close behind. Women threw themselves at me constantly. I couldn't possibly turn them all down. I wasn't a saint. Why couldn't she accept that like other wives did? At first, I'd felt a twinge of guilt watching her cry. I knew she'd endured so much hardship with me, and part of me felt sorry for her. But eventually I grew numb to it. The more she cried, the more annoyed I became. Today, though, she acted like she hadn't even seen them. She just stared at her phone, a smile lingering on her lips the entire time. I purposely walked past her, but she only frowned and retreated to our bedroom with her phone. Something felt off. Yet I told myself it was just another one of her games, playing hard to get. Nora loved me too much. She couldn't live without me. It wasn't until Nora asked for a divorce that I felt something slipping out of my control. Unlike before, she'd split up our assets clearly and meticulously. It was obvious she'd been planning this for a long time. I asked her if she was really serious about that kid. She smiled shyly and said, "Yeah." In that moment, something inside me snapped. All thoughts of our open relationship and mutual non-interference vanished without a trace. I grabbed her by the throat. She knew me too well. She must have seen the raw panic in my eyes. I gritted my teeth and threatened her. "You think you can get a divorce? Dream on. How could Nora possibly leave me? How could we ever get divorced? How could she want to walk away from me?" The thought of her loving someone else made my chest ache violently, like I'd been stabbed unexpectedly. I opened my mouth wide, only to find I couldn't catch my breath. Strangely, the only thought that surfaced in that moment was, so this is what heartbreak feels like. So this is how it felt for her, all those times. No wonder she cried so much. I'd wanted to reason things out with Nora. She wasn't foolish. She ought to know staying with me was the best choice for her. I admitted I'd gone too far before, but I was ready to rein myself in from now on. I'd rehearsed countless words to say, yet the second I saw the hickey on her neck, every single one vanished from my mind. In that instant, I wanted to smash everything in sight. I wanted to demand what she thought she was doing. I even wanted to grab a knife, stab her, then end my own life too. How could she betray me? How could she ever turn her back on me? Just a few months ago, she'd cried herself to sleep over me staying out all night, her pillow soaked with tears. How could she fall for someone else in such a short time? All she did was sneer and throw my own words back at me. "Funny how you don't recognize them when they're on someone else." I felt completely speechless. She was right. I was the one who first proposed we stay out of each other's lives. I was the one who cheated first. What right did I have to blame her? Wasn't this exactly the arrangement I'd wanted? Young, vibrant women had come and gone in my arms, and I'd grown addicted to the thrill of novelty. They'd look up at me with adoration, singing my praises. They'd never seen me at my lowest, most broken state. It wasn't so much that I loved them, but that I loved the version of myself they saw, flawless, powerful, invincible. Not like the version of me Nora saw. I knew she'd stood by me through all those hard years. I knew I shouldn't have treated her this way. But every time I was with her, a voice in my head dragged me back to my past. She'd bring up the old days after our fights, trying to sway my heart back to her. She never knew those were the last stories I ever wanted to hear. I'd made it big now. I'd wanted to cut all ties with my humiliating past. And that included cutting ties with her. I didn't sleep a wink all night. The moment I closed my eyes, the hickey on Nora's neck flashed before me. I couldn't stop the images from flooding my mind, the look of bliss on her face, the way she'd wrapped her arms around that young man, the way she'd grown intimate with someone else. Every scene was like a sharp blade, slicing pieces of flesh from my heart one by one. Yet I couldn't force myself to stop thinking about it. Dawn was about to break when I brushed a finger across the corner of my eye. It was damp and cold. Oh. I was crying. I burst out laughing uncontrollably, the laughter growing louder and more hollow by the second. Was this karma? All the tears I'd made Nora shed were now pouring from my own eyes. Only now did I realize how irreplaceable she was to me. She'd seeped into my bones and blood. The thought of losing her was an agony that felt raw and bloody. It's just that before, she'd never left. So I'd never known. Nora was dead set on divorcing me. I pretended to agree, only asking to meet that boy of hers. I wanted her to see the vast gap between them and me. What could a penniless college student ever give her? I gambled that she'd come back to her senses. We'd been entangled for over a decade. Tearing ourselves apart would leave us both maimed, flesh torn from bone. Surely she'd see reason. I never expected Sierra to crash her car into us like that. She was nothing more than a pastime to amuse my boredom. I'd never truly loved her. I'd kept her around only because she bore a faint resemblance to Nora. I liked the adoring, worshipful way she looked at me with those eyes that reminded me so much of Nora's. I'd already grown tired of her and planned to cut things off. I never imagined she'd be this reckless and extreme. In that split second, my body lunged forward before my mind could register what was happening. All I could see was Nora. Before darkness swallowed me entirely, two fleeting thoughts crossed my mind. Thank God she's safe. And, in the end, she chose him over me. For the 3 days I lay unconscious, I was trapped in endless dreams. My whole life flashed before my eyes, and every memory was woven with Nora. I saw her as a shy schoolgirl in uniform, then the night we squatted by the subway entrance, sharing a cold wrap between us, then the bright, joyful smile she wore on our wedding day. Last of all came the image of her slumping amid chaos, tears streaming down her face as she said she hated me. I must have hurt her deeply, I thought to myself. She'd once been such a person who loved to laugh. What on earth had I done to her? A wave of intense pain washed over me, and I struggled to open my eyes. When I saw Nora again, I agreed to the divorce. Saying the words hurt more than I ever imagined. For a moment, I thought I might not survive it. But she'd been longing to leave me for so long. I'd kept her trapped in pain for years. Did I have the right to chain her to me any longer? I just wanted to see her smile again, even if that smile was never meant for me. So I forced a lazy grin, putting on a careless front. Fine. Take your lover and stay far away. Don't let me set eyes on you again, you're an eyesore. She looked at me for a long time, then finally curved her lips. All right. I ached to call her back. Nora, don't leave me. I can give you anything you want. Please, just stay. I waited, hoping she'd turn around one last time. But she never looked back. I finally accepted the truth. She didn't love me anymore. If this is the happiness you've chosen, then I'll let you have it. Walk away completely, leave all our tangled pain and memories to weigh only on me. Because this is my retribution. I finally understood. This was her punishment for me. To spend the rest of my life drowning in the memories she left behind, forever sinking in regret. The end.
Thank you for listening to Moonlit Love Novella. Please like, subscribe and share.